Oh, it's such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Visit Blinds.com now for up to 45% off site-wide, plus a free professional measure. Rules and restrictions apply.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to this emergency Saucepans and Sidesteps podcast. We are reacting to the news that Leigh Jones has departed the Scarlets and that Nigel Davies is back to take over his old role of director at Rugby. We'll be getting our reactions. We'll be telling you exactly what's been said by who, and we'll be answering some of your listeners' questions. Let's start the show. I am joined by a slightly varied up crew. So Big M is here, would normally be hosting, but because he has, as people on YouTube can tell, he's joining us from a car in Scotland, we've decided that I'm playing fly half this evening, just in case the Scottish 4G decides to be a bit like the Welsh 4G back in the day. Good evening, Martin.
Evening, my friend.
And I've got New Jon with us as well. Second night in a row, mate.
Yeah, I'm very tired. I haven't slept. So just been sitting here and waiting for the cold to start again. So it's nice that it only took 1 day and not 7 days this time, but there we go.
Excellent. And then making her Saucepans debut, we've got Hattie from WRRAP and Women's Rugby Treehouse and Rugby History Project. And am I forgetting anything?
No, that's everything. Just, occasionally.
Oh, and also the BBC's official woke rugby correspondent.
That is my new title, yes. Yeah. Whenever they need somebody woke, I get a WhatsApp message now. Yeah.
Because you're a woman.
Because I'm a woman who talks about rugby on the internet. And I'm always available. So
hence you're here now. But before we start, very quickly, I just want to make a point. This was something that we spoke about yesterday that was highly disputed about its existence, is the Investec Champions Cup official Pringles.
What flavour are they?
I don't know.
Zebra.
It looks ready salted from the can.
Original flavour savoury snack.
Well, to be fair, it is blurring it out. So you've got a good, video AI with it, but fair play. Don't look real at all.
I'm going to be seeing Pringle at the Northampton game this weekend, and I shall gift him a packet of Investec Champions Cup Pringles.
Ooh.
I still don't believe that they exist. It still just seems too far-fetched. The thing about firing little zebras out of a t-shirt cannon at the games,
I'm going to take a video of that next time it happens. Anyway, so we're here to discuss the big news. We're going to take it in stages. So first we'll start off with Leigh Jones departing the Scarlets. Martin, this is something that we've debated on the podcast a couple of weeks in a row, but before I get your I need to request sharing because of logistics.
There you go.
Thank you. So before I get Martin's reaction to this, because we've been discussing it, I'll just read a bit of the statement. The Scarlets Rugby can confirm that Rugby Performance Director Leigh Jones has left the West Wales Club, following a restructure of the rugby department. Jones joined the Scarlets in 2024 ahead of the 24-25 season, bringing extensive experience across elite rugby performance environments, gained at international rugby with both Japan, Wales and Hong Kong, and in the Gallagher Premiership with Tigers. In recent weeks, the Scarlets board has completed a strategic review of the club's rugby operations and will now restructure the department to support the senior coaching team and sharpen the senior performance environment and on-field performance. In light of these changes, Jones's role will not be retained in the new structure. Now, they've said that the role is the thing not being retained. However, we've seen at the Scarlets that roles have changed, but people have stayed the same. So, Mart, what does this tell us, do you think, about Leigh Jones and his tenure at the Scarlets?
I mean, first off, we have to acknowledge the fact that his role was never full-time. Even when he first started, I think it was either 2 or 3 days a week. So, I think we can all remember just before, these roles were announced, we were all thinking we needed a director of rugby. and obviously this performance rugby director position, it wasn't exactly what we needed at the time. It felt a bit confusing. I know a lot of people felt the same. And I'm trying to think, like, obviously we've spoken about on the pod recent weeks, what has Leigh really done and brought to the club? Like, obviously we've spoken about the recovery side of things, and obviously that has improved, but we don't see him, and therefore we don't know what he's been doing. And obviously is at the point now where the club feel that the job he was doing isn't necessary. So it kind of makes us all start wondering, why was he hired in the first place into this position that is, well, it was only there for what, 18 months. They created a position for 18 months and realized, oh Christ, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, Hattie, does this appointment suggest that it was a mistake from day one of the Scarlets, or do you believe that they've reviewed it and they think it's now time to move on from this appointment?
It kind of feels like, to me, it's like, oh, well, he had slightly off title because he wasn't full time. And I think they've realized that actually, no, we need somebody in all the time. And maybe it wasn't the right person to begin with. So for me, like, it happens in business. You just don't want it to happen in a sport, where people, where there's changes after 18 months in a review. In sport, you want it to be more stable, I think, than like corporate business. But it does feel corporate businessy.
It does a little bit. And New Jon, what's your kind of take on it? Is this an opportunity miss? Leigh Jones does have a heck of a CV. Is it a shame we couldn't make more of it?
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, yes. I think when you look at his background in terms of consultancy, then it's a very impressive CV. It's easy to see why he was brought into the organization. But when you have a coach like Dwayne who's moving up into his first head coaching role, does he need a part-time performance director to be the person advising him, or does he need, or did he need potentially a stronger character with him, someone potentially who is even above him in the hierarchy, who is able to actually take some of the organizational strain away from him, rather than someone who is advising him on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays.
I think that's the thing, is when Leigh Jones came in, it was kind of portrayed as kind of a shoulder to lean on or shoulder to cry on, depending on your point of view, of, being kind of the coach's coach. And certainly in Leigh Jones's statements, when he joined the Scarlets, he said that he wanted to work on developing the coaches. And we have to be honest that we haven't seen the fruits of that labor, in my opinion. And there are things, as Mark referenced, there were things that got better, particularly last season. We credited Leigh Jones for the improved availability of players. We didn't see the 20-player long injury lists that we had seen in previous seasons. But ultimately, the progress hasn't carried forward. And that was a problem that the Scarlets had under Dwayne Peel initially. And the fact that Leigh Jones wasn't able to effect a change to that, I think, is a disappointment. So that's the person who's left, and that's my opinion on it. Next, we'll move on to the person who's coming in. So Nigel Davies, who has obviously got a long and storied relationship with the Scarlets, has been appointed as interim director of rugby to the Scarlets for the rest of the season. The Scarlets have said the Scarlets have announced the appointment of former international player, coach, and experienced rugby and business leader Nigel Davies as interim director of rugby with immediate effect until the end of the 2025-26 season. Nigel Davies brings more than 20 years of elite rugby and high-performance leadership, including international player and coach development, and supported by experience in global business and consultancy transformation. The appointment allows a strategic rugby review of the club's operations conducted. The appointment follows a strategic rugby review of the club's operations conducted by the Scarlets board in recent weeks. In the new director of rugby role, Davies will oversee Scarlets rugby department, reporting directly to the Scarlets board with overall accountability of rugby performance, results, and selection. So I think for me, that's the most important line there. Mark, coming back to you, how do you feel reading those words? How did you feel when you heard this news?
I felt relieved at the start. I think we can all agree that we need to change, and mostly that change revolved around Dwayne and what he was doing. Like, I know people are trying to say that we've lined Leigh Jones up as the fall guy, but you can clearly see from disappointment in that statement, we've taken basically jobs off of Dwayne. It reads to me as Dwayne has been struggling with X, Y, and Z, so we are now bringing in Nigel Davies to do this alongside some of the roles that Leigh Jones was doing under his old job. So, like, I'm happy for the role. I think we are quite lucky to have someone willing to take it on for starters. I mean, a 5-month, 6-month job in Welsh rugby right now. I mean, Christ, I don't think you'll have many contenders even looking at that.
Mm, I'd agree with that. Hattie, as a writer yourself, what do you make of the language used in that statement and kind of the choice of words?
It's very, very specific. And I'd also say if you then look at the actual like Nigel statement as well, he repeats it. So it's very, very clear that accountability is a massive part of his role. And I think that's something that has been lacking from the Scarlets over the last couple of, well, since the beginning of the season, really, where, we have the kind of match day press conferences after the game and it doesn't feel like there's accountability. It feels like, oh, well, we'll try again next week is kind of what it feels like. Whereas actually to have somebody say like, my role is to take accountability for what's going on. I think really sets a standard. And I think, in end of the season, if things haven't changed, he knows it's on him. And I think that's pretty big in my opinion. I also think yes, he's coming in as director of rugby, but with his responsibilities where they're saying that selection, for example, they've really outlined it and they are pointing out that yes, it's director of rugby, but it's almost like a more old school before head coaches were really a thing, where he's really managing the team. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing is that he's not head coach, but he's doing a slightly different role to a standard director of rugby, I think. So yeah, it's very specific in the language that they've used, and it's very interesting that it's then repeated. So it's clear that that is his job description and that's what he's here for, and he knows it, and it's been agreed, and everybody's on the same page.
Absolutely. John, some people are calling this a bit of a throwback signing. Like we've had a comment from a listener, Fabio Perini, saying might as well bring back Gareth Jenkins as well, kind of suggesting that this is just a bit of a throwback, like I said, getting an old friend back in. What's your take on it? This is a guy who has a storied relationship with the Scarlets. He's a Scarlets man, but he hasn't actually worked in coaching a rugby team or directly for a rugby team in a few years now. How do you view that one?
I suppose in 2 points there. The first, as I think Mark, you said, who are you going to get to come into Welsh rugby on a 6-month, 8-month contract at the moment to try and fix a situation like this when the atmosphere around it is as toxic as it is, and I think that might be part of it. But on the other side, I don't know who else you could get in who will do it in that sort of short time frame, who has the best interests of the club at heart. Like some people might question, okay, Nigel Davies has been out of the arena for a while, but you can't question the integrity that he has as a person himself when it comes to his relationship with the Scarlets. And you also can't question the effort that he will put behind that job. Now, I'm not privy to the things that are going on in, behind closed doors in the park, but Leigh Jones now has gone, and he's gone from his part-time contract at this job that we're not 100% certain really what he was actually doing a lot of the time. we have Nigel Davies coming in. His role is clear, as Hattie's just said. His statement really clearly echoes the club statement as well. It's clearly intentional, that isn't it? What we are getting with this appointment is direction. And I was fortunate once, many, many years ago, to meet Nigel Davies. And I will say that is a man who I believe offers direction. I believe knows what he wants done.
Well, on that point, John, if we come back to you, Mark, to just tie a knot on this one, a strong personality to have in the building, is it fair to say? You know, this is a guy who's been around the block in Welsh rugby. Is he more an ally in more than one way?
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, the way this is obviously going to work, I can't see, Nigel doing a lot of, on hands coaching, if any. Had you said this is probably more of a managerial style role. But we all know Nigel from his position. I mean, he's got what, 30 years to the Scarlets all in between playing and coaching days. And I think we've all seen what has happened with the WRRAP, where you've brought in people from outside the country who don't know Welsh rugby well, who don't know the history, and we can see things sort of collapse. And I've already mentioned, who would have really taken up this job. And, I'm trying to scour through Welsh rugby, and it's only going to be someone within Welsh rugby or someone who's just been let go somewhere. And I'm coming up with names like Dar Young and Lynn Jones. And, these are not people really we want associated with our club. And even if they were to come in, they'd have a hell of a lot to learn before they'd get to where Nigel is, on his first day. So, I think it's great for the club. And the fact that he's got this pre-existing relationship with Dwayne from those years of having that coach-player interaction, I think that's one of the reasons why this was going to work, because Dwayne would have always.
I do think that Leigh Jones coached Dwayne as well, to be fair.
Yeah, but it's exactly the same. It's like Dwayne has always looked up to Nigel, as in he's always taken instruction from him. He's never given him instruction, or he's never been on that same level field. So in terms of how it's going to work going forward, I don't think we would have had. I don't think it would have been as, what's the word I'm trying to look for here? I think we've had a lot more aggro if it was somewhat, if that relationship wasn't already there. I think it would have been a lot more issues to come.
Yeah, I can completely agree. I think that's a great point that I hadn't thought of. I'm going to come back to what Nigel Davies has said himself now in his statement. So like you said, Hattie, about him repeating a lot of the same words. So Nigel Davies says, this is about bringing clarity, to your point, John. Aligning and stability to the rugby program. I will take full accountability for the performance and results, set clear standards for how we play and behave, and ensure the environment supports players and coaches to perform. My focus is on simplifying messages, reinforcing Scarlet's identity and values, and creating the conditions for improved results in both short term and beyond. And Simon Mudrack, executive chairman, said, this is a strategic decision by the board to strengthen our rugby performances structures for the remainder of the season. We are delighted and grateful that Nigel has agreed to return to Parker Scarlets to lead and support the rugby environment during this crucial period in our season, and at a time where Welsh rugby is entrenched in challenging and wide-ranging review. So Hattie, coming to you again on the language used there, what do we glean from these statements about how that strategic review at the Scarlets has gone, and what the board, I suppose, are dissatisfied about with this current Scarlet senior men's team?
I mean, I think firstly, I'd say that it's clear from the statement as well that the review is ongoing. This is just the first step of their review. So it could be that we see more changes coming. We might have to do another emergency pod. I don't know. But yeah, from the language, it's a very, very well put together statement. which I'm honestly surprised. Welsh rugby statements generally from any of the regions, from the Scarlets in the past as well, like they're never good. They're it's random bits and clips. This is really, really well put together, which I think is really, really important when we look at the fact that one of the things we really, really want to see is alignment. We want to see clarity, and we've got a statement that is aligned. It's clear. We know what's going on. We know what's coming, but they also haven't put specific dates out, so there's not going to be sort of like pitchforks when it's not dropped on a certain day. It's a very, very good statement. Um, but for me, I'm just very, very happy with it. I'm excited to see what happens. I think this is what I wanted to see when we had the change kind of in the summer. This was kind of what I was hoping we'd see. I thought we'd see a lot more clarity. I was hoping that the performance would pick up. They obviously didn't. But this is kind of what House of Luxury, I guess, give us, is this good kind of PR. So yeah, it's good to see the elements coming together, and I hope that this is a change in the right direction. But yeah, I like the statement. It's a good statement.
It is, I agree. And John, coming to you, some of the word language used here, if I go back to Nigel Davies's statements, he says, "I will take full accountability for performance and results." And he talks about it being both long term, but also short term in his statement. And there's the line earlier on in the statement talking about how he will have influence on both Scarlett's identity, which some could interpret as game plan, and also selection. The word selection is deliberately used. So from that, what do you piece together about his job will be? And I suppose to phrase it another way, is he the captain now?
Well, I think we can probably go back and forth a little bit on this because we all probably have a slightly different interpretation of this. But as far as I'm concerned, reading that statement, I think that Nigel Davies is in charge now. I think not only is he director of rugby, and in the idea that he has this overall, he's like CEO of sport, if you want to view it that way. He's making a lot of head coaching decisions. Now, the obvious question that follows that then is, and the question that we've seen online a lot as well is, where does that leave Dwayne at the moment? I think that leaves Dwayne to focus on attack a lot more. I think it also gives him the opportunity to maybe focus on what got him into this position in the first place, which was he was a very good attack coach. That's why we signed him in the first place and tried to bring him over. And we've had complaints, in the past few weeks where we've looked at the defense and the attack and we say, why are we fantastic in attack one week and terrible in defense? And then the following week, we have a fantastic defensive display and we're terrible in attack. How much of that is someone like Jared Payne, not being able to focus on one thing at a time because his remit is too large? So I think that when we're talking about having this clarity, having the concept of the identity, the game plan, I don't think that means he's coming in and he's going to steamroller over this and say, this is how we're doing it. This is clear. This is what I want. I think it's about knowing that in Dwayne's philosophy, in his attack philosophy, he's got the Scarlet's way in heart. And how can he enable that to happen while taking other things away and allowing him to focus on that? Is how I read that. I'd be interested to know if you all have different interpretations of it.
Hattie, Big M, is that kind of your reading of it?
Yeah, I'm feeling exactly the same. That was how I read it. That's how I'm seeing things will go forward. One thing I did kind of pick up from the language in that statement is the fact that because they're making this change now, it feels as though they're saying the season's not over. I look at this, we've got 10 URC games left, and Leinster away is the only one that I'm saying, we've got probably no chance of winning. So we get the coach, and we've seen the effect that a new head coach, a new DOR can have on the team. We saw it, just over the bridge, not so long ago when Toby Booth left. You were your best friend too. So if we get a reaction like that, or even just getting the coaching back to where it was last season, because we saw how well we were playing then, it wouldn't be far-fetched to see us fly back up the table. And I think that's one of the main reasons why this decision and these actions have come now, because there is, okay, it might be naive, but it's not impossible to save the season.
If I may quickly, we're still a game in hand. We're 10 points away from 8th at this point. It really is possible to do essentially what we did last season.
And our
and
South
make it to
Africa
the
tour is out
playoffs.
of the way.
Yep.
I think.
Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was just going to say, it feels like with the review that they said is ongoing, by bringing in an actual director of rugby, and it's somebody who knows the club, who knows Dwayne quite well, like it feels like they've actually are trying to fix the problem. I think sometimes when and we did it, like people have said it, I was kind of complaining about Dwayne as well. It's like, oh, well, get rid of him. Actually, they've made a good choice, and it seems that they've actually backed it up, and they're giving Dwayne, they've realised that he probably hasn't had the opportunity or the tools to succeed. Let's give him a job that we know he can do and try and fix what we're doing, because, yeah, like we've all said it, there's not a lot of options. Not that many people are going to try and join a club halfway through a season where we don't know whether or not we're actually really going to exist by the end of it.
Yeah. So my kind of reading on it is the kind of comment about like, oh, bringing a guy back, is it jobs for the boys, basically? My kind of thing is, from the limited amount that I know about Nigel Davies, is I don't think he's a yes man. So I don't think he's come into the building to tell everybody that everybody's doing a great job and they just need to keep doing what they're doing. I don't feel like that's what he's coming in to do.
But potentially in a passive aggressive, sarcastic voice, but not in a.
He just looks at it and goes, "You're doing a great job," in a kind of way that makes you think,
don't
like,
change
I'm
a
doing
thing.
the worst job anybody has ever done. But the things that kind of stick out to me is when he talks about taking full accountability in the short term. Either he's a fool, or he's been given the power to actually implement change in the short term. And the way that you do that with a rugby team is tactics and selection. Those are pretty much the only ways that you can do it. So,
Which selection is in his remit?
yeah. So that kind of leans towards the kind of he's in charge now type situation. I also think it's really interesting that both he and Simon Mudarak refer to Scarlett's identity, and they talk, which to me, is the Scarlett's way of playing, which we and anybody listening to this podcast knows. Attacking, flair, backs heavy type of thing that we haven't seen this season. And that's kind of what we said on the podcast as well, is even when we've won games, we haven't played great rugby that was great to watch. And Scarlets fans, we've met and spoken to a lot of Scarlets fans doing this podcast. And whilst there are people who are born into being Scarlets fans all over the west of Wales, there are also people who choose to be Scarlets fans. And the reason that people choose the Scarlets as their team is the style of rugby, and their pretty red jerseys. And that's not been present on the field today. And I think that it's really interesting that that's been mentioned by both Nigel Davies and Simon Mudarak. Talking about Dwayne, I think to kind of understand the Dwayne situation, we need to go back to the start. And I found this article on the BBC from when Dwayne was appointed, and I'm reading it back now. Some may call it enlightening, some may call it harrowing. But it's certainly something. So this is from May 2021. And it's an interview with John Daniels that's been published in the BBC. And the headline is Dwayne Peel, former scrum half, to take charge of Scarlets next season. So it says Scarlets General Manager John Daniels has confirmed that Dwayne Peel will be in overall charge at the region next season following Glenn Delaney's departure. Peel was last month named head coach for the season, with Delaney moving up to a director of rugby role. The immediate exit of current coach Delaney was announced on Saturday evening. Dwayne will head the program next season, said Daniels. He said, it's a step up for Dwayne, but one we are convinced he is ready for. He says later on in the article, he says, Dwayne is a winner and he's not afraid to say he's a winner. He's got massive energy. He's someone who has taken himself out of his comfort zone in order to develop as a coach and get as many experiences as he can before taking this next step. it also says that it reminds us that Dwayne Peel had initially signed a 3-year deal with Cardiff Blues, as they were then. And the Scarlets had to both pay compensation to Cardiff to get Dwayne Peel, and also, of course, pay compensation to Glenn Delaney for him to leave early. And it is confirmed that by John Daniels that when Dwayne Peel was appointed, it was not planned that he would be in overall charge of the Scarlets, but that changed following Delaney's departure. So I think this kind of reading that really speaks to how we got to the situation we're in that it was supposed to be a gentle step up for Dwayne when he joined the Scarlets, and it ended up being a massive one. And Mark, coming to you, thinking back to that couple of weeks where Glenn Delaney was promoted to director of rugby, then left, and then Dwayne Peel was head coach, and then basically tacit admission in this article made director of rugby straight from being an attack coach at Ulster. You can see how we've ended up in this situation.
Yeah, it's not just that either. If you can go through every single season that Dwayne has had under us, and you can go, well, there's at least one coach missing for large part of the season. It is quite ridiculous the time that Dwayne has had with us. I mean, in terms of him being given the platform to succeed, I can't say that we've done that. Now, I'm not saying, this is, the club's fault, because obviously there is a lot that was in Dwayne's. I'm acting as if he's gone. He's not. There's a lot in Dwayne's remit that has gone wrong that are, actionable and correctable, decisions. But, the plan obviously was to have a DOR from the start. So why is it taken, 4.5 years to get another one in place? That's obviously a big question we need to ask. And as we've seen in previous seasons, why were we allowed to go so long without an attack coach before Lee Blackett came in? Then I think Babs left and he was never really replaced. There's a lot of issues along the way in this tenure. And, we should still remember that under Peel as, overall in charge, we have had a couple of years worth of good rugby. If this season had started, just a little bit better, and 2-3 performances picked up, we would not be in this position at all. It's quite stark. Like, obviously you've got to look at everything as a whole, but if you take it from, let's say, January 2024 all the way up to well, obviously last month, it was pretty good overall. So, the huge fall off in the 3 derbies, I think that is what's killed us more than anything. If we had kept on the same vein and kept moving upwards after Bristol and Bordeaux, obviously we had Glasgow before that, I don't think this would have been necessary. I do think this was literally started Christmas week. I think that's when there was already probably a review going on, but when it was like, okay, we need to start acting now, that was when that was instigated.
Yeah, it's a great point, because if you think, like, we lost to Bristol by 1 point, so let's say one of the tries that we scored in that game that was disallowed isn't disallowed, and then the game against Poe, Archie dabs that ball down over the line that the referee has ruled that he's knocked on. Are we having this conversation? Has any of this happened? Arguably not.
Just
Hattie,
to go wider than that. Sorry, the Ospreys game, if ball gets over the line at the very beginning of that, if was it? I'm trying to remember who it was. Was it Rogers? Was it me at the beginning of the Dragons game? It's a fickle thing.
Hattie, do you think that the Scarlets are protecting Dwayne Peel?
It is really difficult because at some point in the last, 4 years, why has there not been any accountability for the fact that we've not been, we have half a good season and half a bad season. We don't seem to have a full complement of coaching staff at any one time. Like, why has he not been held accountable? But some of that's on him, some of that's on the club in general. I think it from my understanding, when they're saying that the review is still ongoing and having a proper director of rugby, it does feel like this is maybe his last chance. And if he doesn't pull this off, or if things don't improve, then it's time. That this has been an experiment that didn't work, and he wasn't ready. Which, to be honest, we probably could have told you a couple of years ago, he probably wasn't ready for such a massive step. Um, but yeah, it's annoying that he hasn't been held accountable in all this time, but who was there to hold him accountable?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And my kind of thing is now, are we just sat around waiting for the end of the season now? Because if Nigel Davies leaves at the end of the season, having completed his interim role, is it then, okay, Dwayne, back to you, mate? Or is it we're going to get someone else as a full-time director of rugby, or what? So I think that's an open question that the board still need to answer, in my opinion. Anyway, I want to come to some viewers' questions and comments to get your thoughts, dear listener, about what's been going on. Some of you have asked questions, some of you left comments. Hattie says, has Hugh cleared his email backlog? I think you can see very clearly that the answer is no, and I've got no intent of doing it. Scarlet Central says, here's my take. We wanted change and we've got it. How Peel is still there, I'll never know, but if you look at the last paragraph of the article, Scarlets will confirm any future rugby appointments as part of its rugby review in coming weeks. I think Peel is next to go. Kemps Jr. says, is this a strip backwards or damage control? What exactly is Peel's role? And is a hot dog a sandwich? I think that's worth dwelling on. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Depends.
It's a hot sandwich.
Is it my mum's version of a hot dog?
What's your mum's version of a hot dog?
My mum doesn't like actual hot dog sausages, so she gets like regular sausages and puts them in like a baguette and calls it a hot dog. That's a sausage sandwich.
Bougie hot dog is
this is the foundation of my argument. I say yes, because if you say a sausage sandwich is a sandwich, and then if you put sausages in a baguette, is it a sandwich still? I say yes. And then how different is sausages in a baguette to a hot dog? I say the difference is irrelevant. So yes, a hot dog is a sandwich.
The difference is 90 degrees. If the opening is at the top, it's not a sandwich. If you rotate it 90 degrees, sandwich.
Yeah. In certain parts of America, they called hot dogs glizzies. And
that's disgusting.
Oh, it gets worse. It gets so much worse. It was like 2 a.m. and I was watching a WNBA game, and they had a glizzy gun, and they were shooting hot dogs out of like a t-shirt cannon into the crowd.
Don't mention t-shirt cannons around here. He makes up so much stuff.
No, he's
Well, have you seen a
too many
glizzy gun?
waking nightmares about them.
Okay, so I think coming back to the serious points, the points from those two commenters are both about Peel again. Is where does this leave Dwayne Peel? And we've kind of mentioned it kind of already. We've kind of covered it about how this is maybe last chance saloon for Dwayne. And there's probably a further announcement to come at the end of the season as to what the next steps are. How do you think, anyone can chime in on this, how do you think Dwayne will be feeling about this appointment of Nigel Davies?
I think it's, a double-edged sword really for him. On the one hand, he's, having basically a lot of his, responsibility, his job basically taken away from him, which, that's going to hurt. But at the same time, personally, he's never looked worse. There's gotta be some sort of, some weight off his shoulders, some sort of moment to go in. Okay, I don't have to deal with that no more. That sort of moment. So there's going to be hurt, but I think there's also going to be a lot of relief there for him as well. And being able to focus purely on coaching, like Hattie said earlier, I think that's how we get the best out of him.
Any agreements, disagreements? It does feel a bit like, when you've massively messed up at work and like upper management gets brought in and there is that like little hint of shame, but also relief that it's no longer solely your problem.
New Jon, is Dwayne going to be walking around with a cone of shame?
No, I'm just thinking about how seen I feel further from that, hearing that description from Hattie. I think, full cards on the table. I know that part of my thinking around Dwayne as head coach is sentimental, and I know how much of that is colored by watching him as a player. And I think that does cloud my judgment on it slightly. Part of me, I I just want him to stay on, and I want him to stay on until he's successful. But like, yeah, I'm not saying like why, and I'm telling you why, because I know my judgment is clouded. And when I'm looking online at what people are saying around this, people are generally, it seems, in two camps, but the majority are in it's probably time for him to go at some point now. Now, does it happen before the end of the season? I hope, in my ideal world, where hot dogs are not sandwiches, um, what happens is we get to the end of the season and having this external stress, the other pressures of being a head coach taken off him, and or rather just really let's be honest, saying it almost just being an attack coach. Hopefully, we see such an improvement with that, or at least a visible improvement that we can say there is something there. I just don't want him to leave the Scarlets having done damage to his career. That's what upsets me about it.
I totally see your sentimental point, and I think as fans we've got a right to be sentimental, and we've got a right to be illogical in the name of sentimentality. That's the point of being a sports fan. I have a similar thing, but for Stephen Jones. I believe that the reality where Stephen Jones becomes Scarlet's coach, head coach, and the reality that we're living in is the same reality. So in order for that to happen, at some point, Dwayne Peel needs to stop being Scarlet's head coach. Now, that is a little bit brutal, given that I believe that those two were bestest friends forever. But if you talk about who we could possibly get in, Stephen Jones, believe, is currently an assistant coach at Newcastle Red Bulls. I think
How
he would
long
come
is
to the
that
Scarlets.
Only
contract
just
for?
started.
Yeah, he's only just started, but in the similar kind of vein, I think he would see Scarlet's head coach as a promotion from that.
I don't think we can outbid the Red Bulls, though.
No, but he's a Scarlet's man.
He's
Yeah,
going to
but
request a
so was
release.
Dwayne. We need to learn from this. This is the problem. We need to learn that we can't just take lads who are great players, who we all love massively, who
Stephen
have
Jo-
not proven themselves, and put them in a position where they're not equipped for it.
I would say that Stephen Jones is as proven as an attack coach anywhere in the world.
No,
I would
no,
argue.
no, no, not as an attack coach, as a head coach. We can't, like, we're having serious problems. Like, we're having serious problems. If we genuinely think, okay, we're getting rid of Dwayne, bringing in Stephen Jones isn't going to fix
But
that.
if he gets made Newcastle head coach, I don't think he leaves that job because it would be like. Anyway, we've gotten very sidetracked. Let's get back to some listeners' questions. So, over on Facebook, Wayne Gwillem says that this appointment is avoiding the issue. Ellis Davis says the words deck chairs and Titanic spring to mind. So this is something that we kind of mentioned in yesterday's pod, Mark, is that the last time when these changes were made, those phrases were used as well. And the Scarlets couldn't afford to have that happen again. What, if anything, makes you think that this is not a case of deck chairs on the Titanic?
Well, firstly, we're getting a role that we actually need. We in the last deck chase sort of move, we saw someone just one person pushed to the side, then someone else do something else, and a quite random job created. And we're not seeing this. We are seeing that director of rugby role, and we're seeing people, as in people. It's only obviously Nigel and Dwayne that's been affected by it. And the way I'm seeing it is we're bringing in someone who's got that experience, who's got that knowledge base to act as a DOR, and we're making a coach essentially. So there's always going to be some sort of element. The same as there's talk about odd jobs for the boys with Nigel, like we've already mentioned. But you've got to you've got to look at it, retrospectively and from a bigger picture angle. So I honestly think that this is the best move that we could have made in the short term, and they've repeatedly said this is short term. This review that's going on, I think that review is really dictating what our structure looks like next season and the sort of person we look to hire for next season. So I wouldn't say moving the deck chairs as such, more as maybe dropping the lifeboats down and getting the ladders ready. We are doing something proactively here.
Yeah, I go with that. And so to finish off the comments, Clark Hartnell says, was Jones ever in? Not seen any impact from his appointment. We've covered that earlier in the pod. Peter French says, more to come, perhaps. I think we all agree with you there. And Paul Daniels, I assume not the millionaire, says, we were all demanding change, which I think is fair to say that we were. So that's the emergency pod. Any closing thoughts from anybody? This feels like I'm chairing a meeting at work. That's normally what I say at the end of meetings. I say, any other business, anything else anybody else wants to cover.
It feels like a very corporate podcast, doesn't it? We're talking about change and roles and management and restructuring.
I once referred to someone, I think I referred to Nigel Davies as the CEO of rugby during this. So yes, it's very corporate.
Well, it's a good job I broke up the tension with my Champions Cup Pringles and hot dog chat. I think those are the real problems that we've solved.
100%.
Definitely.
All right. Well, thank you for watching, everybody. Subscribe to WRRAP on YouTube. Follow whatever audio platforms that you're listening to. Hype, if that's an option. Who even knows what that does? Like the video. Comments. Get your comments in. Beware, Producer Leigh. He does bite back if you leave a nasty comment. The woke one is Hattie, and we shall see you all next week. Cheers.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.